Okay, this is a quick explanation and demonstration of how key values and variables and local variables work within the Command Lua API. So I guess the best way to demonstrate it is just get in and show you. So let's load up a scenario. Any old one will do. I'll load up one of the standalone scenarios that comes with the game. Okay, so right here we've got our console, and let's just mess around with, I don't know, let's make a local variable, and let's call it, well, that's a simple one is local variable, and let's make that a string that says this. And it says this will be clear when the script finishes. We'll also have a global variable. And this is just a name here, so we can distinguish which is which. You can call it anything you like. Same with the local variable. You don't have to have the word local in it, whatever, whatsoever. However, prefixing it with this flag here, local, is necessary to make it a local variable. And we'll explain what this does. This will persist. So the global Lua environment in Command persists between scenarios closing and being reopened or opening a different scenario. A key value, I won't save this in the standalone because I'll break it. Well, I won't break it, but I'll just create more work myself. So let's play around with this first, and then we'll do key values in a separate scenario. So we'll print our local variable. We'll print global variable. Quicker way to do this is just copy and paste. And just to make sure I've got this correct, I haven't made a typo. Okay, so we should get two print statements coming up with our strings just there, which we do. It's great. So we got that is considered to be a script on its own. That's just that script is run and it's finished. So if we comment this out and comment this out, we should see that local variable returns either nil or an error. I think it will return nil, and global variable will return the string that we entered. Yeah, so it will return nil, and we will get the global variable there that persists after the script runs. So global variables are useful for things like assigning functions when you load a scenario, putting unit tables into memory so that you can call on them from various different scripts. Where the danger lies with that is that if you use non-specific variable names, like if you're in the habit of calling things X and Y and A and B and C, you're eventually going to run into a situation where you forget to assign that variable, and then you call it, and it's been assigned somewhere else. So you've got 3 different scripts that all use X as a global variable. One day, one of them is going to call X from the wrong. Without reassigning it, and you're going to end up with invalid data or some sort of error there, and it's going to take you a long time to figure out what's going on because you've not named your variables appropriately. The reason I know that is through personal experience. So 2 good lessons here. Always use local variables where possible so that they do their thing and then they disappear. When you do have to use global variables, name them appropriately. The couple of keystrokes it takes to name a variable properly is well worth it when it comes to, first of all, reading your code later on, but also reducing the likelihood of crossover and mix-ups there where you actually accidentally get the wrong data. So we'll open up another scenario and we'll create a new scenario. What I'll do, this is a good example of how the global variables persist between scenarios. Okay, so this is a totally fresh scenario. You can see it empty on sides. We'll save the file, save it as test. It'll probably tell me that I've already got one called test. Yeah, I do. Okay. So here, the console persists between scenario load and open, close, and load. If we run this again, despite this being a completely different scenario, the global variables will have persisted. So if we, again, had even two different scenarios that were using similar variable names and they weren't refreshed properly in between, then we can run into problems there. So global variables are really powerful, but there's also a lot of potential for things to go wrong if you get a little bit sloppy or lazy with naming your variables and making sure that they're instantiated properly on scenario load. Now, what we'll do here, we know that our global variable has persisted. We can just double check that one last time. Yep. Now, let's say that we want this to be the next time we open this particular scenario file. Now, at the moment, if we close command and reopen it, this global variable disappears. The memory is clear when command is closed, and the Lua environment is reinstated when command is opened, and it's instated in a blank state. So if we wanted to save something important, an important variable in this scenario file, so that next time it's opened, we can look at it, the way we would do that is to use a key value. So we use the function setEdit, set key value. We name it with a string, so we name the key value, and this is like giving it a variable name. So let's just say our key val. And then we give it a value. Now, previously in Command, I can't remember when this changed, but it's a fairly recent change. This function was very picky about the kind of data you put into it. So if you put a nil value, if you put a Boolean value in there, it would return an error. If you put a number value in there, it would return an error. That's changed. You can put numbers or Boolean values in here, but the data type that's preferred is a string, and it's very easy to convert things to strings and back. So I just use strings wherever possible. You'll also see when I demo it in a minute that Lua is very good at figuring out what you mean when you use numbers and strings, and it'll convert it for you. So let's put in here a string that is actually a number. So let's do 100, and let's return that. So that will be setEdit. So this should return our global variable, which will be that string, and then our key value, which will be that number that is kept as a string. Great, excellent. So to just demonstrate that this is in fact a string, we'll show you the type there by using the Lua native function type. We can probably stop printing that global variable now. I can probably stop assigning that now. So I'm just commenting those out so they're not effective. And you can see that it's the type is a string. So even though this type is a string, we can still use it in math. Lua is very accommodating like that. So let's say we want to print, we want to do a little bit of math on that. Rather than assign it to a variable, I'm just going to put it straight in the print statement. Hard type this morning. Okay, so we're actually returning a string here, remember, and Lua will automatically convert it for us and return this as a number, return the result, the correct result. Told you I can't type this morning. There we go. Return the number as the correct result, and it should return that as a number as well. Let's just double check on that. Considering that it's done arithmetic on it, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a number. There we go. So we can store key values. They're always stored as a string, but Lua will automatically convert them into into numbers when you're going to perform math on them. Best practice is to do that yourself. If you look through my code, you will see that there are conversions using toString and toNumber when I'm doing storing key values. But you don't have to do that. But I just think it's good practice to make sure that it's done. And it's done the way you want, rather than leaving it up to Lua to interpret. So let's show now that this global variable, and I'll just reset our key value just to make sure it goes back. So our global variable is still there, key value is still there. Let's cut that. We'll save the scenario so that the key value is stored, and now we'll exit the game and we'll reload it and see if it's still there when we reload our scenario. Okay, we've reloaded the program. I'll just expand that. I'm going to load up that test scenario. Bring up the Lua console. And see if our variables have carried over. Now, the expected behavior here is that global variable will return as nil because we've closed and reopened the game, and the key value will come back with, I believe it was 100 we left it on. There we go. So you can see that the key values persist between sessions of the same scenario. Global variables persist in the same game session regardless of scenario, and local variables only exist until their script ends and then are cleared. So let's have a look at some of the data types that we can assign to a key value. And we'll also demonstrate the types that come out at the end. So we'll start with a Boolean. That does store, that works just fine, but it comes out as a string. So if we do an if statement and use that result as our comparator, we will get true, but only because it's a string and it exists. So my typing is terrible this morning, until I had a late night last night. Okay, so it returns true. That's great. If we change this to false, it will probably also return true because it's a string. It's not actually a Boolean. And you can see that's false, but it's a string. So this is where I said before, it's important to make sure that you convert the data types on your own terms. Now, the way I would handle this is to store our key value as a string, and I would just store it saying, just making that actual phrase a string, and then convert it to a Boolean when it comes out by saying, if the string equals false, then it equals false the Boolean, and vice versa for true. So that's a bit of a gotcha with just being able to store any old thing as a key value. That's why I prefer to store everything as a string and then convert it from a string when it comes back out to whatever I want the actual data type to be. So I hope that wasn't too confusing. I think I did an okay job of explaining how key values work there. So we saw that it persists between scenario loads, whether we close or open the game, it's in the scenario file, and global variables are there until we close the game and reopen them, regardless of which scenario we're playing. And local values or variables persist till the end of the script, and then they are cleared from memory. So if you need any further explanation on that, do let us know, and thanks for your time. Thanks.